Hello everyone and welcome to another video of the Sky channel. In this video we're going to be talking about Rector Drath and I'm going to be showing you my build for Rector Drath. We're going to cover the skills, the artifacts and the masteries that I've chosen for Rector Drath to make him an insane reviver and healer. Rector Drath is a champion that I received in the Apprentice Pass, and ever since then this has been a champion that I've been using both in PvP and PvE because of its crazy abilities. Let's start talking about the skills. Now the basic attack attacks one enemy and has a 35% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. This is actually really good, and the reason why it's good is because it reduces the damage that enemy champions can do to your champions, allowing you to live a little bit longer. I generally do not use this to do damage, even though it can do a decent amount of damage. The targeting of the champions for this attack are usually high attack champions that I want to debuff so that they cannot do a lot of damage to my champions. For example, if there's an enemy Alice and I know she's about to release a major skill, I want to try to get a decrease attack debuff on the Alice quickly so she cannot eliminate my entire squad. Now you can see how leveling up this skill helped. Level 2 and level 3 increased the damage by a bit, but more important is level 4, 5 and 6, which increased the chance of landing the decreased attack debuff on the enemies by 5% each, so 15% in total. So that's skill number 1. Skill number 2 is a really cool one. Heals all of the allies by 20% of this champion's maximum HP. So that's this champion Rector Drath's maximum HP. And then after healing, places a perfect wheel buff for 2 turns on all allies with full HP. And places a 15% continuous heal buff for 1 turn instead on allies with less than 100% HP. Now perfect wheel, what does it do? Well, perfect wheel makes the champion that receives this buff not targetable directly by enemies. Of course, if the enemy does an area effect damage, they can still be targeted, but otherwise they cannot be selected to do an attack on them, assuming there is at least one of your champions that doesn't have the perfect wheel. The perfect wheel also reduces incoming damage that your champions might receive from enemies that are doing area effect damage, and that number is 15%. For the perfect wheel, allowing your champions to live a little bit longer. On the other hand, the continuous heal heals champions by 15% of their maximum HP at the beginning of their turn. So this is really cool because first of all, it heals your champions by 20% of Rector Drath's maximum HP. And I keep on specifying Rector Drath's maximum HP because that might be much more than your champion's maximum HP. Especially if you build it the way I've built my Rector Drath. Now after that, if your champions are at 100% HP, they're going to get a perfect wheel. Perfect wheel reduces incoming area effect damage by a significant portion, right? 15%, and makes sure that the enemies cannot target them directly, assuming you have at least one champion that doesn't have this perfect wheel. There's more to it, which actually comes when we talk about its 4th skill, which is the passive skill. Now, if the champion wasn't maxed out in HP after getting this buff, it applies a continuous heal on that champion, and the moment that champion's turn starts, it gets an extra 15% of its maximum HP healing as soon as the turn starts. So really good skill, and you can see how leveling up helped. Level 2 and level 3 increased the healing by 5% each, level 4 increased it by 10%, and then level 5 reduced the cooldown of this skill by 1, allowing you to release this more often. Alright, skill number 3 is Spirit Form, and it's also really cool. It revives a single ally with 60% of its HP and then fills their turn meter by 60%. It also places a perfect wheel buff on them for 3 turns. We already talked about perfect wheel. It makes sure that that champion cannot be targeted directly. Of course, it can still be targeted by area effect, but area effect damage is reduced by 15%. Now, by the way, the difference between perfect wheel and regular wheel is that perfect wheel sticks with you even if your champion releases an active skill. Regular wheel gets removed once your champion releases an active skill. So a very good revive of one of your champions, giving them a bunch of HP and giving them a perfect wheel. So hopefully they get to live longer and be able to do a lot more damage. You can see how leveling up helped. Level 2 reduced the cooldown by 1, and level 3 again reduced the cooldown by 1. Alright, the passive skill, and this is what I was talking about before. Whenever an ally under wheel or perfect wheel buff gets a turn, heals them by 10% of their maximum HP. Really cool, right? What that means is that even though Perfect Wheel was being used instead of continuous heal on champions that had reached full HP, once Rector Drath healed them, they still get extra healing of 10% of the maximum HP when their turn starts, even with Perfect Wheel. So technically speaking, Perfect Wheel is actually really cool. It's even better, in my opinion, than getting the continuous heal, because continuous heal wears off immediately after one turn. Perfect Wheel sticks around for 2 turns, and you're getting 10% of your maximum HP healed each time your turn starts, versus 15% in the continuous heal, and you are getting reduced damage by area effect attacks. But what's best is if you look at the next part, it also increases res of allies under wheel or perfect wheel buffs by 50. So you have a higher chance of resisting enemy debuffs. Isn't that cool? Now it says that if you have more than one Rector Drath, the res increase is not going to multiply. Okay, so really cool, right? There's a lot of healing, there's an increase in res, there's the debuffs that you can give to your enemies, you can bring your allied champions back to life and give them a bunch of healing in addition to that. Rector Drath can do really cool things. The Aura skill, it increases ally res in Doom Tower battles by 55, which is nice, but it's very specific to Doom Tower. It's not all battles, so that's not that cool. And of course, if you want to look at the blessing, we are using the Survival Instinct. And what that does is that it partially fills this champion's turn meter whenever a debuff is placed, spread, or transferred onto them, and it occurs once per enemy turn. And if you scroll down, you can see 1 star fills the champion's turn meter by 5%, and you get a HP bonus, which is great for Rector Drath. 2 star gives it a little bit of an extra attack, which is fine. 3 star fills the champion's turn meter by 7% and gives it a little bit of defense, which is good. 4 star again gives a lot of health, much needed for Rector Drath, and critical damage, which is not that cool. If I were to get it to 5 star, the turn meter would be increased by 10%, and I'd get a bunch of res and accuracy, which is nice to have for Rector Drath. Finally, 6 star would increase the champion's turn meter by 10%, and also removes the turn restrictions, which I guess it means that it doesn't have to be only once per enemy turn. It can be multiple times per enemy turn, and you get a bunch of speed, which you also need for Rector Drath. So overall, a pretty nice boost in stats, particularly the HP, which I really like, and you get your turns more often, which is something that you want, of course, with Rector Drath. Alright, moving over to what artifacts I've assigned to the Rector Drath. Now, one thing you'll probably notice is that I have tried to max out on Rector Drath's HP. You can see 63,402 health for this champion. Now, the reason for this high amount of HP is because, number one, I do want Rector Drath to live as long as possible, because while Rector Drath is still alive, the rest of my champions can be brought back to life as well, because Rector Drath can bring them back to life. So the most important thing for Rector Drath is to stay alive so that he can, number one, debuff the enemies, and number two, heal and revive my other champions. So health, of course, very critical for Rector Drath. Now, defense can also be considered very important, but you know what? Health is even more important, because if you remember skill number 2, it heals allied champions by 20% of this champion's maximum HP. In other words, the higher Rector Drath's maximum HP, the better its second skill in healing the allies. So of course, that has been a pretty big priority for me. Speed is also very important. You want Rector Drath to get as many turns as possible. And if you all remember, speed determines how often your champions get their turns. The more speed, the more often they can do their turns. So of course, speed is a very critical stat in pretty much all areas of the game, and that is why I'm using the full speed set. So 6 out of 6 of the artifacts are part of the speed set, giving me a 36% boost in speed as a base from those artifacts. Now you can see as we go through the different artifacts that I've assigned, I am focusing on HP primarily, speed, res, and accuracy. Res, so that Rector Drath is able to prevent enemies from debuffing him, or let's say stunning him, or giving him these sort of different debuffs that I do not want Rector Drath to get. HP, as I mentioned, you already know, better healing, better survivability, and speed, so that Rector Drath gets the turns more often. And as we go through, you can see the similar priorities being placed in pretty much all of the artifacts that I have for that particular reason. The boots are speed, of course, because speed boots are very important. They're the only artifacts that give speed as a main stat, so definitely not missing out on that. The chest plate and the gloves both have HP as a primary stat, because I want Rector Drath to be able to live much longer. When it comes to rings, amulets, and banners, well, I was pretty limited to my options, so I did go ahead with whatever I had. But again, for the banner, I did want the accuracy banner so that Rector Drath has a higher chance of assigning the debuff to the enemy, and of course HP in the amulet and the ring. So that is how I have assigned the artifacts on Rector Drath to allow him to be faster, to be able to resist the enemy's debuffs, and to be able to live long enough to bring my champions back to life and heal them as much as possible. Now you may have noticed a +1 on Rector Drath, and that's because I got a copy of Rector Drath and I decided to empower him so he gets a bunch of extra base stats. Finally, let's talk about the masteries that I've assigned so far. And of course, the last 2 rows are still missing. I still have to get them, but if you look at the ones that I do have, the first one is giving me an increase in res by 10 to prevent Rector Drath from getting a bunch of debuffs. The next one increases the amount of healing and value of shield buffs this champion receives by 5%, so 5% extra healing, which is great because Rector Drath does get a bunch of healing by himself. This one reduces the damage received by this champion by 8% when the champion is hit with a critical hit. Survivability is important for Rector Drath, so you can understand why this was chosen. The next one, 50% chance to remove one random debuff from this champion when they lose 25% of the maximum HP or more in a single enemy skill. Hopefully he doesn't lose that much HP, but if they do, might as well remove a random debuff from them. And then here, 30% chance of placing a block debuffs buff on this champion for 1 turn when a stun, sleep, fear, true fear, freeze, or petrification debuffs expire on this champion. This sort of allows Rector Drath to not continuously get a lot of debuffs by the enemies if you're facing an enemy that does give a lot of debuffs. The next one actually increases your allies' res by 5 for each buff placed on them by this champion, and that would be the perfect wheel or the continuous heal buff. So, ensuring that your allies are able to resist a little bit more against debuffs that the enemies might be trying to give them. Going to the support tab, this one gives 810 extra maximum HP, which is good for Rector Drath for sure. This one increases the value of heals this champion casts by 5%, which is a no-brainer. It is absolutely necessary for a healer. You want to try to make sure that there's more healing that he can provide to the others. This one increases the amount of healing and the value of shield buffs placed by this champion by 10% if the ally has 40% or less HP. So, boost in healing if you're healing an ally with less than 40% HP, a must-have for Rector Drath, of course. Then this one increases the amount of healing and value of shield buffs placed by this champion by 15% if the ally has stun, sleep, fear, true fear, or freeze debuffs. Again, if the allies have these debuffs, more healing, and that's what Rector Drath needs. This one has a 5% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random skill by 1 turn at the start of every turn. So the chance is low, but imagine if you are reducing the cooldown of one of those critical skills like revive or healing, it's definitely worth it in my opinion. Now I haven't unlocked these yet, but this is what I'm planning on getting soon. The Cycle of Revenge, 50% chance of increasing the turn meter by 15% when an ally is attacked with a critical hit. And this of course applies once per skill, so if it's a skill that has multiple critical hits, it's only going to give that increase in turn meter once. This one is really cool, 30% chance of extending the duration of any buff cast by this champion by 1 turn. That could be the continuous heal or it could be the perfect wheel, which is definitely cool, right? That's a lot of extra healing you're giving to your allies. This one to increase speed by 8 for each dead ally stacks up to 24 if 3 or more of your allies are already dead. And then finally, increases this champion's turn meter by 20% when an ally hero drops below 25% HP. In other words, if your allies are about to die, there's a good chance you might get a turn coming up soon so that you can actually heal them. So you can see how this really works out well with Rector Drath. Again, I don't have any relics for Rector Drath, but of course that's something that I'm hoping to get soon. And that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about Rector Drath. You can see how he is such an amazing champion with a lot of healing, reviving, and can increase the resistance of your allies while also reducing enemies' attacks. This makes Rector Drath such an important champion. Even though it's an epic and not a legendary, it is a really strong epic healer / reviver. Focus on getting a lot of HP, res, speed, and accuracy for Rector Drath so he can live long enough to keep your allies alive while also debuffing the enemies. And before you go, I want you to know that you can save a lot of money whenever you make in-game purchases in Raid Shadow Legends. All you need to do is use my promo code with Aptoide, and for every purchase, you can get 10 to 35% cash back so that you can use it to purchase other packs. Imagine the savings, right? You buy a $100 pack and you get up to $35 back to buy another pack. Well, you are going to be saving a lot of money in the long run while also supporting our channel. The steps are very simple. All you need to do is follow the video that I'm linking to the description of this video, or you can click that button that's going to appear at the top right of the screen. That'll take you to that video. And if you have any questions, join our Discord and I can guide you through the process personally. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please share it with your friends. Please like the video, comment below on your thoughts about this video or ideas for future videos so I can create the sort of content that you're really looking for. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next one.